Why do you doubt that God is real?
Well,
What is your evidence that God is not real?
if God is omnibenign and omnibenevolent and omniscient and omnipowerful, how come there are certain parts of scripture where God literally commands his people to commit genocide against women, children, and infants? Let's look at the book of, if I'm not mistaken, 1st of Samuel, chapter 15, if I'm not wrong, where
David
God
Goliath.
sends a group of people of Israel to end or bring death to the Amalekites. And he literally commands, word for word, to bring death to men, women, children, and infants. And a bunch of other cattle and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But like, if God is omnibenevolent, why would he do that?
You go to the Near East today, they will not have problems, typically the majority of them, with that text. They will have the opposite end of the problem, which is, your God is a gracious God? Your God actually died for you, for his enemies? That's weird, because it's a shame and honor culture. So you're being heavily influenced by your Western cultural sensibilities to even ask that question. 1. 2, if you would have been in the ancient Near Eastern culture, that would have been very normal. And some would have even said that would have been more gracious than have letting them live, because they would have been sold into prostitution. The families would have been totally divided, never seeing each other yet again, and ended up many of the kids in sex slavery. Now, it's still a difficult passage. I'm not going to stand here and be like, oh, come on, that's easy. Thirdly, though, it was not genocide. Genocide is the implication of wiping out an entire people group completely. The Amalekites pop up later on in the Bible. So many of them were judged, yes, and justice fell on them, and yet many pop up later on. So it was not this type of ethnocentrism, which was, hey, the Jews are the chosen people. The Jews are always going to be the crown people group, and they're just going around committing genocide. No, they never commit full genocide. There absolutely is judgment. These other people groups pop up later on. I'm glad you brought this passage up, though, because yet again, this is the greatest example that I know of in an ancient Near Eastern type of text showing God's grace and forgiveness.
So like,
Why? 400 years, God says, I do not want the Amalekites to perish. I do not want them to perish. I want them to change. I want them to change their bestiality. I want them to change their infanticide, their patricide, and come to actually know me. 400 years. They were getting consistent warnings from prophets. And then finally God said, I'm going to lead them over to their own desires. And what their own desires are going to ultimately lead to is judgment.